Our next speaker is Mr. Mitchell Warren, who is the Executive Director of AVAC and also the co-chair of the Global HIV Prevention Coalition. Mr. Warren, as someone who heads up an organization which has played a strong role in advocating for HIV prevention in the civil society space, what are the two things that you think we could have done better and what we need to change to do differently in order to bring down new infections to less than 400,000 per year by 2025?
Mia, thank you so much for your moderation of this session and for helping the Global Prevention Coalition bring the critical pieces of prevention to the conversation. And I want to thank the speakers before me, and particularly the conveners of the development of the political declaration. These are important moments as we look, and if we look to 2016, to get to your question, we saw really ambitious targets, first developed in the UNAIDS strategy 5 years ago, and then enshrined in the political declaration of 2016. And targets are critically important. But if we look back on the last 5 years, we know that while we have made significant progress in reaching people with testing and with antiretroviral treatment, as we must, we have failed miserably in reaching the primary prevention targets. And we need to look at that critically as we embrace new targets this week with the political declaration, recommitting us to trying to get, as you said, to fewer than 400,000 new infections by 2025. To do that means we've got to act differently. We cannot just continue as we have. Targets are important, but we've got to develop the programs and the policies and the leadership at all levels to deliver on those. So what has gone wrong? Well, most of all, I would say two things. One, we need to recognize that HIV has always required a comprehensive, integrated, and sustained agenda. And we haven't seen that in primary prevention. And we have seen prevention squeezed to just receive what's left over after we scale up testing and treatment programs. This is not an either-or equation. We have to scale up testing and treatment programs and scale up primary prevention, because no one intervention, no one activity is going to reach all people at all points in their lives, both people who are already infected with HIV and people who are not yet infected. Second, we need a people-centered approach. Primary prevention is not just products. It's not just condoms. It's not just PrEP. It's not just voluntary medical male circumcision. Those are critical components. And we see those and newer interventions designed rightly around the virus. That's how product development and science works. But we have to design the programs around the people. We actually know this from 40 years of HIV, but we are tragically reminded of it just in these last 18 months with SARS-CoV-2. Even with remarkable, breathtaking progress in the science of vaccine development in COVID, vaccines don't end epidemics. Vaccination programs do, and it's true in HIV as well. We tend to get so focused on the products that we forget, as the ambassador just said, the structural drivers, the systematic issues. And they absolutely have to be grounded in the people who we seek to serve. And the opportunities are growing as we see new options beyond the prevention options we have today with the vaginal ring, injectable PrEP, both interventions that may be with us very soon. But those are what science develops as new options. But we need the policy, the leaderships, and the programs to provide these as actual choices to people. Science develops options. Our leadership, our policies, and our programs make those choices or provide those as choices to people. And that takes leadership at all levels. I just want to underscore as I close that, we think a lot about leadership this week at the high-level meeting, and political leadership has never been more important. In countries that have epidemics, and that's true in every country, in reaching people in greatest need, and those are often people who are marginalized and criminalized and stigmatized. So political leadership matters. The world is watching, but the world isn't just watching ambassadors and ministers and heads of state at the UN. They're watching all of us in civil society, because community leadership matters. Community need to drive programs. They need to drive what programs and policies can deliver. It's not just one group of people anymore, that it's not just one intervention. So I guess in closing, Mia, I'd say we can't get stuck in this idea that one thing is going to be our answer to the AIDS response. It has always needed a comprehensive, integrated, and sustained response, and we need to recommit to that today with people at the center.
Thanks so much for your reflections, Mr. Warren, and for pointing out that both political and community leadership are important. Last speaker is going to be from Kenya, and Ms. Joyce Ahoma is from the Y Plus Global Network, and she's also a CCM representative of young people living with HIV in Kenya. Ms. Ahoma, as a young woman living with HIV in Kenya, you are at the forefront of the HIV fight. How can we leverage the lived experience of a young person living with HIV, such as yourself, to lead on promoting HIV prevention?
Thank you very much, Mia. First of all, allow me just to say that I am really excited to hear all the previous speakers talking about young women issues with so much passion. And I am very positive that going into the high-level meeting that we will get a lot of good outcomes. So once again, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences as a young woman living with HIV, and also to explain how these experiences can be leveraged to improve HIV prevention programs. It is 5 years since the last political declaration on HIV and AIDS, and unfortunately, we have missed the global targets on HIV prevention among young women by a huge margin, prompting very many questions like why? Why are we still failing? Why is this the pace of progress still very slow despite the advanced HIV prevention technologies and interventions that we have at our disposal? Recent data shows that 4,500 young girls and women in sub-Saharan Africa acquire HIV every week. This translates into about 27 girls acquiring HIV every hour, meaning that in the time it takes us to finish this session, about 40 girls would have acquired HIV in my region. That is very scary, isn't it? Now, young women in all their diversity continue to encounter too many barriers when accessing HIV prevention services. Some are not equipped with the knowledge or education they need to make informed choices. Others are not allowed to make autonomous decisions regarding their health because of their sexual partners. Some cannot afford health services or commodities. Some are discouraged because of the stigmatizing attitudes of healthcare workers. Others are simply barred from accessing services because of laws and policies such as age of consent. But the contrary is seen in HIV treatment programs. While HIV treatment programs are not perfect, they are recording better results. Is it because we don't have any option but to take our medication? In my experience, that is not the full picture. I adhere to my treatment for very many reasons. First off, the HIV treatment care and support services I receive are free and are available to everyone who needs them. I get my medication in bulk. I only go to the facility every 3 months. I get psychosocial support through counseling and support groups. I receive services that are tailor-made to my needs, delivered by peer counselors on request. I get select sexual reproductive health and rights services at my facility free of charge, but most importantly, I receive these services in a stigma-free environment where everyone is trained and equipped on how to handle my needs. I may not get the latest treatment regimen, but all these factors help me to remain virally suppressed. I know I make living with HIV sound rosy, but it isn't. I am lucky. Even then, I still have to take a pill every day until better long-acting treatment options become available or until a cure is found. The successes that we have achieved in HIV treatment have been hard-won by strong community advocates. Even among young people, we have youth-led networks such as the Global Network of Young People Living with HIV, also known as Y Plus Global, who are shaping the response for young people living with HIV in all our diversity globally. A clear indication that young people can lead the response. As a young woman living with HIV, I also represent my constituency in various decision-making platforms, such as the Kenya CCM. Here, I ensure that our issues are prioritized and funded. We must learn from this and fund other peer and youth-led projects such as the Have Voice Fund and Resilient Empowered Adolescent and Young People, also known as READY Initiative, and others which are supporting greater youth leadership in sexual reproductive health and HIV. HIV prevention and sexual reproductive health services are critical to the lives of every young woman or girl. These services should be free, they should be fully integrated, should be delivered at scale and tailored to meet the holistic needs of young women. New commodities and prevention technologies should be rolled out and made available to every young woman. Having these tools will mean nothing if they don't get into the hands of the young women like me and my friends. Finally, I call on everyone attending the high-level meeting to recognize ethical youth leadership as a non-negotiable in the HIV response and to financially support youth-led programming and advocacy. Thank you.
We're going to move on to Dr. Lillian Benjamin now, who is a young women advocate at the Athena Network, and that is a global network that advances gender equality, human rights, and diversity within the context of HIV. Dr. Benjamin is going to comment on how to prepare for the introduction of new HIV prevention options for young women. Dr. Benjamin?
Thank you so much, Maya. I'll move forward to, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be here. As introduced, my name is Dr. Lillian Benjamin Mwakiosi from the United Republic of Tanzania. Given the context of our conversation today, and as we are preparing for introduction of new HIV prevention tools, first of all, it's pretty evident via community voices and even scientific numbers, as we might have heard from previous speakers, that adolescent girls and young women remain highly at risk for new HIV infections in Sub-Saharan and Eastern Africa. For instance, I'll give an example. In my country, according to Tanzania HIV Impact Survey, year 2016-17, adolescent girls and young women take up 32% of new HIV infections annually, approximately 2 to 3 young women getting infected per hour. Seconding Joyce, this is high key and unacceptable, and we need to act immediately. For us to be able to deliver effective prevention interventions and therefore cater to the needs of our communities, and that's young women, we need to strongly employ the use of differentiated service delivery models in HIV infections. We have seen the fruits of differentiated service delivery in HIV care and treatment. It's high time we employ similar human-centered approaches in HIV prevention as well. This strongly applies now, right in time, as we prepare for the introduction of new prevention tools, including the dapivirine ring, very exciting to young women, long-acting pre-exposure prophylaxis, and many more upcoming tools underway, having the community at the center of every intervention while expanding prevention options. This is pretty much what has been said by many other speakers, that we need to put communities at the centers and face of the interventions and new tools that we are coming up with. Introduction of new HIV prevention tools must pay attention to the quality and comprehensiveness of HIV prevention packages prepared for communities, and especially young women. We need to pay attention to the places that the services are meant to be provided, time that the services are meant to be provided, but also who provides these services and how the services are being provided, all according to what the communities and these young women or targeted populations want. Making sure that we pay attention to diversity within the target groups that we are working to deliver these services for. By doing so, we'll be able to provide services that are tailored to the needs of our communities, hence increased uptake of services for even the most marginalized communities. This also reminds me to talk about the issue around policy environment, that is necessary for us to do regular policy environment check in advance. We do not have to wait for tools licensure or introduction, having the tools ready in the countries for us to start questioning whether policies are friendly enough. It's time to be ahead of time and think ahead of time and prepare in advance and look at the policies in advance to make sure by the time we have these tools available for our communities, the policies are friendly enough to ensure easy and fast access to the communities. And last but also not least, it's very vital to ensure that countries continue investing in both community engagement and locally produced data to inform ideation planning, implementation, monitoring, and even evaluation of these new tools and HIV prevention programs at large. Thank you so much, Maya.